At work, you are running. You are leading meetings, making decisions, managing people, solving problems, holding the energy of the room. And then you come home and it's like someone pulled the plug and you feel virtually that you have nothing left to give them at that moment. And underneath it all is this quiet guilt because you gave your best to everyone else. And the people who mattered most are getting kind of like whatever is left over. Welcome to What If It All Goes Right, the show for high achievers who are ready to stop fearing the worst and start stepping into their power. I'm your host, Angela Gargano, 6-time American Ninja Warrior, keynote speaker, peak performance coach, and former biochemist. Every episode, I'm going to give you the mindset shifts and practical tools to shake off the doubt, reignite your energy, and remember just how powerful you really are. Because it's time to stop fearing the worst and start asking, what if it all goes right? What if it's already going right? Welcome back to What If It All Goes Right? I'm your host, Angela Gargano. This is my doggy Pepper if you're watching the video. But let me paint a picture and I want you to tell me if this sounds familiar. At work, you are running. You are leading meetings, making decisions, managing people, solving problems, holding the energy of the room. You handle pressure without flinching. You are capable, composed, and competent. And people rely on you and you deliver. And then you come home and it's like someone pulled the plug. Maybe you're short with your kids over something small. Maybe you can't make one more decision, so dinner becomes a standoff. Maybe your partner asks how your day was, and the most honest answer you have is, I just honestly don't want to talk about it. And you love these people, you love this life, and you feel virtually that you have nothing left to give them at that moment. And underneath it all is this quiet guilt because you gave your best to everyone else. And the people who mattered most are getting kind of like whatever is left over, you know? So this episode is about that gap. Not the time gap, not the productivity gap, but the identity and energy gap between who you are when you're at work or you're a badass entrepreneur and who you are at home later when you try and turn that off. And more importantly, what do you do about it? But before we dive in, if this podcast has been landing for you, just hit follow so you never miss an episode. And if you've got 60 seconds after this, I want you to leave a review. It genuinely helps this show reach more women who need it. Okay, so let's get into why the most capable women, especially in the room, can feel like the least capable person when they're at home. Right, Pepper? She's like, yeah, sometimes you don't have any energy to give me to throw the ball. And I'm like, I know, you gotta go throw the ball. Okay, the first thing I wanna say is this. The women who lead a team at 2 p.m. and cannot decide what is for dinner at 6 is by no means failing, right? She's just depleted. And those are two very different things. This is not time management problem. It's an energy and identity problem. And until you understand it that way, every solution you try is going to kind of miss the mark. So here is what is actually happening inside your brain. So let's get sciencey. Your prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain responsible for decision-making, leadership, impulse control, and executive function, has a finite daily capacity. And every decision you make draws from that same reservoir. So every time you regulate your emotions, hold your composure in a difficult conversation, think strategically, manage someone else's reaction, or push through discomfort to stay professional, you are spending from that account. And most of you are spending most of it before noon. So by the time you get home, maybe you work from home and you're just getting off your computer, the account is close to empty, which is why the small things feel very enormous. Why a simple question from your kid can feel like a lot, while your patient runs out in situations that on different day you would handle with ease. Your brain is not broken, it's just spent. Like you just got not much to give, you know what I'm saying? So psychologists call this decision fatigue, and you've probably heard this word before. And it's real and it's measurable and it's completely predictable when you actually understand it. But the problem is not your character or who you are. The problem is your system. We need to get a better system for you. So this way you don't feel that way. So this way, when you do go home, you do feel better and that you can just be yourself or whatever. But there is another layer here, and I think this one is actually harder to talk about, is that a lot of women in this community have built a highly competent, high-performing professional identity that requires constant emotional regulation and performance. And I don't mean like performance in a fake way. I mean showing up a certain way, communicating a certain way, managing yourself a certain way so that you are effective and credible in the rooms that you are in. And that takes energy, a lot of it, even if we don't realize it. And the longer you wear it, the heavier it gets. So think about what a single workday actually asks of you. You walk into a room and read the energy before you say a word. You adjust your tone depending on how or who you're talking to. And you deliver feedback in a way that lands without damaging the relationship. You hold your reaction when someone says something frustrating in a meeting. You make 100 micro decisions about how to show up, what to say, how to frame it, when to push, and when to let it go. I know it's like a lot of random things, but let's think about this. That's a lot of emotional labor. And it is invisible, which means nobody is accounting for it, including you. The problem is that coming home does not automatically take it off. So one of two things happens. Either you are still performing at home, still managing everyone, still running the household like a project with deliverables, still holding it all together on the outside while quietly running on nothing, or you crash, you check out. You go from fully on to completely offline. And the people around you get a version of you that is somewhere between absent and a little bit irritable. Both of those damage the relationships that matter most. And both of them leave you feeling like kind of like a fraud in a way. Successful out there, but then like struggling when you're here. And I want to say something about that feeling because I hear it constantly. The women who run a team, close deals, command a room, and then fall apart over a disagreement with their partner. The woman who is posed and powerful in every professional context and feels like she is barely holding it together at home. She looks at the gaps and assumes it means the work version of her is the performance and the home version is the truth. But that's not what it means. Both versions of you are real. The question is whether you are bringing intention to them both, or maybe only just one. So let's get into it. So let me show you what this gap looks like in practice, because I want you to be able to recognize it without judgment. It looks like being short-tempered with your family the moment you walk through the door, not because anything is wrong, but because the threshold has been crossed and there is no buffer left. It looks like feeling guilty about not being present and then using that guilt to check out even further. Because guilt is exhausting. And when you are already depleted, the guilt just adds to the weight. It looks like performing warmth rather than feeling it. Going through the motions of being a present parent or partner while your brain is somewhere completely else. And it looks like this persistent sense that you are living two separate lives, and neither one is getting all of you. So the real issue underneath all of this is that your personal life has become the default setting, the place where there is no strategy, no intention, just whatever is left over after everything else has been handled. And a lot of times work is getting your best planning, your best energy, your best leadership, and home is getting just the remainder of that. And that is not a reflection of your values. Because I know that is not what you want. It is a reflection of your system or the absence of one. So let's build one. Why don't we? We're here. We might as well. The first thing I want you to create is a transition ritual, a genuine one. An on and off switch between work and home. Not checking email, not running through your to-do list on the drive home, not walking into the door mid-thought about something that happened at 3 o'clock. A real transition, even 10 minutes. It can be a walk. It can be sitting in the car before you go inside and taking 5 slow breaths. It can be a workout, a podcast, a playlist that signals to your nervous system that one chapter is closing, we're closing that tab, and another one is opening. The content matters less than the consistency of it, right? And that intentionality. Because your brain needs a cue that the context has changed, right? Without that cue, you drag the whole day across the threshold with you, and everyone in that house ends up absorbing what you brought in without either of you realizing it. And I've talked to so many women who say they feel present at home, but their families would tell you a different story. And that gap between how present we think we are and how present we actually are is almost always a transition problem. The body arrives home, the mind is still at work. And the people who love you can feel the difference even when you cannot. The second thing is what I actually like to call the identity bridge. Instead of thinking about your work self and your home self as two separate people, I want you to identify the values that are true in both contexts because they exist. Maybe you are someone who leads with honesty in both. Maybe you are someone who cares deeply about the people around you, whether those people are your team or your family. Maybe you are someone who shows up fully when you are truly present. Those values do not belong to one context. They belong to you as a human, right? And when you leap from those values at home with the same intention you bring to work, the gap starts to close. You stop feeling like two different women and start feeling like one woman who moves between two different environments. The third thing is to shift from time management to energy management. I'm gonna say that again. Shifting from time management to energy management. This was huge for me personally. And if you have been around this podcast for a while, you know this is something I come back to a lot because I genuinely believe it is one of the most under-leveraged shifts anyone can make. So bear with me because in this context, it looks a little different. Most women in this community already have their time somewhat figured out in a way, right? What they have not figured out is how to protect their energy during the day so that there is something left at the end of it. That means being strategic about when you schedule your hardest cognitive work. Your brain is the sharpest in the first few hours of the day for most people. Protecting that window for the work that actually requires your full capacity. Stop filling your mornings with emails and low-stake tasks and save the hard thinking ones for the afternoon when your tank is already empty and then being frustrated that you didn't do it. Can you tell that I've done it before? It also means building in micro recoveries throughout the day, even 10 minutes between meetings, a walk to get a water, stepping outside for a moment to get some actual air, something that gives your prefrontal cortex a break before it is completely depleted. And I don't want you to think about these as luxuries, okay? This is the maintenance, okay? And skipping them because you are too busy is equivalent of never stopping to refuel and then being surprised when the car stops moving. It doesn't take that long to refuel. Do you notice that? You just kind of, yeah, it doesn't take that long. It means being honest about which commitments are draining you disproportionately and whether they are worth the cost. Not every obligation deserves equal access to your energy. Some things cost more than they give back. Part of leading your own life is being willing to look at that honestly and make the adjustments. Living your life by design instead of living it by default. You cannot manufacture energy you have already spent, but you can absolutely stop spending it carelessly. You can be more intentional about it. And the fourth thing is that honest conversation with yourself. Not the version of you where you are hard on yourself, the version of you where you're just honest. Like, what does home currently get from you on a typical weekday evening? And just write it down. And what do you want it to get? Where is the gap between those two things? And what is the thing, just even one thing that you could do to change this week to start closing that gap? And it's not a full overhaul. Make sure you know that. Not a full overhaul, a one small thing. Because one consistent change repeated over time does more than a complete lifestyle reinvention that only lasts 4 days. So start small, start real, and start somewhere. And I also just want to take a moment. There was this awesome quote that I saw the other day, and it said, oh man, I don't know, I can't remember the woman's name right now, but she's a writer and she wrote this. She's like, yes, pretty much anything will work when you unplug it for a few seconds. And that's including you. You know, when like you go to the store and maybe something was wrong with it and they're like, did you like unplug it or turn it on and off? And you're like, no, of course I did, even if you didn't. And then you do it and the thing works again. And I love that saying. It's true. And that's true when it comes to protecting your energy and doing energy management. It may seem frustrating, especially if you're like, I know for me, I'm like, I get really into a task and I don't want to get up, but unplugging yourself for a second, especially when you start to just be like, blah, like do that, like unplug a little bit before you get to the point where you're like, I don't know where I am or like what I'm thinking about, or like I'm just brain dead basically. Right. So taking those intentional times to have that little unplug, whether it be a couple breaths or just like a get up and like a walk around the house for like 3 minutes is going to add up over time. And it's going to be so helpful for you to really protect that energy and help you show up better in your life. Now for me, like I don't have kids, but I have my amazing dog here, right? I have my dogs. I have my mom at home who like definitely I'm so tired sometimes even when I come back for the holiday and I don't have much energy left and I feel guilty about that. And I feel guilty that I don't have energy because I run my own business all the time. So what are ways that I can, you know, to shift my energy different? And a lot of it was messing around with my day, my schedule. And I have a coach right now and he's been working with me on this as well. Like where can I intentionally set things and like what drains my energy? For me personally, my Zoom meetings drain the hell out of my energy. So we've been a lot more intentional with getting less Zoom calls on the calendar unless they're very needed, and then only setting those Zoom calls between a time period of 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. And that's it on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then all those other days, I do not have calls. And that for me wasn't time management, that was my energy management. Getting a task done straight in the morning, the hardest task done, energy management. Getting some movement and breath work in the morning, energy management. All the stuff that I've been doing now for my schedule in order to hit the goals that I want have all been about energy management and not about time management at all. And it is allowing me to show up more present in other areas of my life. You have to have that disconnect. You have to have that boundary because at the end of the day, like we didn't get put on this earth to just work, although I love my work, right? We got put on this earth to live, to be present, right? So these little hacks are really great. So pick maybe like one thing for you that you can do. And here's what I want to leave you with today. You do not have to choose being exceptional at work and being present at home I refuse to let that be the conclusion here because I do not believe it's true. But you do have to make both intentional. Because if you do not design the transition, depletion will design it for you. Living your life by design, not by default, right? If you do not protect the energy, the default will be whatever is left. And the people at home, the ones who love you the most and need you the most, will keep getting the remainder. You are not a different woman at work and at home. You are the same woman in two different contexts. And she deserves to show up with intention in both of them. The transition is not about leaving work behind. It's about coming home on purpose. Now, if this episode resonated with you, send it to a woman in your life who gives everything at work and is running on empty by the time she gets home. She needs to hear this too. And make sure you're following on podcasts, Apple or Spotify, so you never miss an episode. Of course, I'll see you in next week's episode. And remember, you do not have to shrink at work to show up at home. You just have to choose to bring the same intention to both. And guess what? Ask yourself, what if it all goes right? What if it's already going right?